everything's fine now after one conversation. And I was like, okay. I don't know why I keep trying with novellas. It's a lot of like literary fiction stuff will be like that too. And I'm just like, all right, whatever. Well, hello. Welcome back to my channel. Joshana here to talk about some friggin' books that I have read recently. As per usual, like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined and you have not already. Or just leave an emoji if you want to say hi but you don't really have anything to say by the end of the video. I have 6 books to talk about today and only one of them is a DNF. How exciting. These are all books that I did finish here in April. It is the 28th today when I'm filming, and there is one more book that I imagine I'm going to finish today or tomorrow, but I'm not finished with it yet, so whatever. And I don't do, my wrap-ups aren't monthly wrap-ups anyway. This just happens to be one where they are all books finished in April. Usually there's some like overlap, like a few from the last month, but not in this case. The first one is a book that I did actually read physically, but it was from the library and I already took it back. So here it is on the screen for you. The Crane Husband by Kelly Barnhill. This is a novella which I stupidly didn't remember. I was gonna say I didn't know or realize, but Elle has talked about this book a fair amount, and she actually talked to me about it like one-on-one, being like, I think you might actually like really enjoy it, like blah, blah, blah. And I'm certain she told me it was a novella, or she, at least in her videos, mentioned it was a novella. So I just forgot. The kind of brief summary of this one is award-winning author Kelly Barnhill brings her singular talents to The Crane Husband, a raw, powerful story of love, sacrifice, and family. It is a reimagining of The Crane Wife, which is a, I don't know if it's like a folk tale or some kind of mythology or what, that I'm not familiar with. I'm a little more familiar with now, but I was not familiar with before. And yeah, this being a novella, if you're familiar with me and my reading habits, I don't know why I keep trying with novellas. I should just learn. Sometimes it just sounds so appealing, right? Like the premise sounds cool, the story sounds intriguing, and you know, maybe I'm bogged down with like reading a lot of longer books recently, and it's taking me a long time to finish books, and it's like I just kind of want to jumpstart, so a novella sounds appealing. Hey, this one sounds cool, let me pick it up. And I just almost never like love them. I rarely like hate them, I would say, but I rarely am like, oh my god, new fave. I don't know why that is, so I should learn. But it was kind of the case here too, where not a new fave, I didn't love it, didn't hate it by any means though. The characters just felt a little bit surface level to me, and this also is a writing style that it doesn't always work for me, where it feels very fabulism or magical realism, where it's all very like head in the clouds, vague, and like, is this real or is it imagined? I don't know. And like, we're not like grounded in the story, the plot, or the characters and like their thoughts and feelings. Like, we're getting some of that, but it all feels very airy. It's just a writing style that doesn't usually work for me. It's a lot of like literary fiction stuff will be like that too, and I'm just like, all right, whatever. This one though is dealing with a topic that I can see obviously like resonating with a lot of people, and like a lot of people feeling like a connection to this book, right? Not just like from a, oh, I can empathize, which is like where I'm coming from. It's dealing with abuse though, and it's from a POV of a child seeing abuse in the household, like with their mother being abused. The child is not abused, but yeah, just seeing this happening, seeing it with your own eyes, hearing it, knowing it's happening, seeing the aftermath of it, you know, in the wounds on your mother. And, you know, so heads up for that, by the way, if that's something that like you would need a kind of content warning for. I can definitely see a lot of people like connecting to this a lot more and it resonating with them a lot more, and therefore obviously liking it a lot more than I did. And another thing, aside from like the characters, like I just didn't feel like the connection and kind of the writing style too, was the pacing. The ending felt very, very rushed. The ending felt incredibly like, whoa, okay, whoa, like I'm getting whiplash from like how fast we're just like, okay, and then here is the end. Themes involved here that I caught on to, I guess. Sacrifice, family for sure, and like protectiveness of family and loved ones. Definitely, as I said, abuse in the household, abusive relationships, and fear. While the children in the house weren't experiencing the abuse, it's still traumatizing, of course. Even if you never see the abuse happening, I think even if you don't hear it happening or see it happening, and you just see the aftermath, and I think honestly, even if you don't see any of that, it's hidden very well. Children can pick up on tension. Children can pick up on the bad vibes, right? Especially their mother, if their mother is the one who's being abused and maybe they don't know, they don't have any evidence of it. But I'm certain most children could pick up on at least their mother's fear around this person, and then the child would have that fear too. And that in and of itself can be traumatizing, obviously. So it was a lot of that kind of conversation happening. So yeah, ultimately I gave this one 3.5. This is one where my personal feeling toward it would be probably more of a 3. I bumped this one up because of the thematic element and the execution of that, I think was done well. Next, I read a NetGalley e-arc, The Silverblood Promise by James Logan. I have recorded an individual review of this. I don't know if it's up or not. If it is up, I will link to it if I remember in the description or in the cards or whatever. This is an adult fantasy, beginning of a series. I think it's a debut book. I'm pretty sure it is. I'll be a little bit more brief here than I was in the individual review, obviously. Our main character is Logan. He is from a noble house that is now bankrupted, and he's kind of exiled, essentially. He hasn't seen his father in years. He is off gallivanting around, gambling, because he had a duel when he was younger and accidentally killed the guy. That guy's family demanded restitution, and Lucan's dad paid the money, and it bankrupted their family, and so he's kind of like the disgraced son. But he's off gallivanting around until he learns that his father has been murdered and left a very cryptic note for him, and he vows to avenge his father and find out what happened and bring whoever did it to justice. And off he goes on his grand adventure. He goes to a different country where he gets embroiled in a whole lot of shit. Various little adventures, all kind of connected, little kind of side quests and things. He meets a lot of very interesting characters. And I mean, he's even involved in a plot to overthrow the government, a conspiracy type thing. And kind of gets sidetracked with all of this, but it all is connected to what happened to his dad, and yeah, just lots of adventure, basically. This is one that, depending on the sequel, if the sequel is in a similar vein and I enjoy it either more, obviously, or about the same amount, that I could see myself rereading. I really enjoyed the main character. I enjoyed the side characters. I really enjoyed the plot. I thought it was a lot of fun, and that is the biggest thing for this. None of the characters are my new faves. I wasn't super gripped and engrossed with any of the characters, but I liked them all, the ones I was supposed to really well. I really did enjoy them. And the plot also, it's not my new favorite, oh my God, groundbreaking, whatever, but it was very entertaining. I thought the pacing was good. All these little side quests and stuff, I enjoyed them. And there's a little bit of lore in this world, which, I'm a sucker for. Ancient civilization, very mysterious. We don't know the truth about it. We're obviously going to learn more about that as the series goes on. But yeah, I just had fun. I just had a fun time with this. It was, to me, very entertaining. And the writing style was, adequate at the very least. There were a couple times where I felt like it was a little bit of exposition disguised as character dialogue, where a character is talking so much about something that you're I think in a normal conversation, it's kind of weird that you're going on and giving, but it's exposition reasons. It was only a couple times. It wasn't enough to really bug me, but I will notate that. So yeah, this isn't a new fave necessarily, but I quite enjoyed it. And it's one that I think a lot of people will probably enjoy. Certainly if you enjoy that type of fantasy, there are some serious things that are happening, and it's not just all fun and games, but just entertaining. So I gave this one 4.25 stars. A pretty high rating for me. Very, very entertaining. Thought it was well done, and especially if it's a debut, as I think it is, I thought it was a really solid debut too. Then I finally started the Rera Chronicles. I have now read everything in this world except for Chronicles, and it's not even a series that is like completed, and it's a series that it kind of seems like, as far as the overall plot, like the overarching plot of the world of Elon, of all of these books, that this series is almost like, you know, when you're reading a novel series, but then there's like some novellas peppered in, and the novellas like do give you some added context to things, or, you know, stuff that's mentioned in the main series gets like delved into more in the novella, or like, oh, in the past this thing happened, and then there's like a prequel novella that like, oh, showing the full details of that. Where there's novellas that, yeah, they can be fun and they can like add a little context, but there's nothing necessary to the overall plot of the main series in those novellas. That's what I feel like Rera Chronicles is, based on Michael J. Sullivan talking about it. And now, having read this one, that's my understanding of it. And yeah, so this is the beginning of Royce and Hadrian. They are put together by a very elderly, very cryptic, mysterious professor who says, you gotta go do this mission together. And it's kind of like a pointless mission. And they're both just like, why do we gotta do this? And he convinces both of them to do it, and they develop a very begrudging respect and maybe like for each other. Like, hey, you're cool, actually. They kind of hate each other at first. A lot. But by the end of this one, they're like, all right, maybe you're not so bad. And yeah, I thought it was fun. I read the first 2 chapters and then like set it down to finish the Silverblood Promise. And so I didn't pick it up again for like a fucking week almost. And then when I did pick it up though, I literally, the first day that I picked it up again, I read 250 pages in one day, which is fucking crazy for me. So yeah, very quick pacing, and like, it's just fun. I don't know, it just was a good time. And I also really enjoyed that we got like some Gwen chapters, and we got more of Gwen's backstory, and Gwen is awesome. I love her. And as always, seeing like connections to things, and also because I've read all the other books, there are some things that I know, and I'm like, I know who that is, or I know who you're talking about, or I know like a secret here that like our characters don't even know is a secret yet, and so that's always kind of fun. I ended up giving this one 3.75 stars. It's not, like, again, it's not something that's like vital to the overall plot of the world of Elon, I don't think. And I like Legends of the First Empire. That's still my favorite. I do really love Royce and Hadrian, but they're not like, I really like them. I really do enjoy them as characters. I just have more of an attachment to the characters from Legends, I think, and I probably always will. And next, I picked up Into the Bright Open by Cherie Dimaline. This is a Secret Garden remix, and it is set in Canada with some Métis characters, and there is a sapphic romance in this one. Mary Craven, in this is her name, Mary Craven. Her parents die, leaving her orphaned when she is 15 years old, and she is sent off to live with her uncle that she's never even met, I'm pretty sure, at his kind of country manor. I do not see myself rereading this one, and I'm probably gonna unhaul it. I didn't dislike it, I didn't hate it or anything like that, but it just wasn't like captivating enough or kind of like special enough for me personally that I see myself ever wanting to read it again. The writing style was nice. I do enjoy Cherie Dimaline's overall writing style, and there were some lines in here that were like very nice, lovely lines. So I didn't have any issues there. I think it was more so getting into the characters. I liked the characters, but there was kind of just something bugging me a little bit, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But toward the end, we have some character from like the town who mentions overhearing about Mary having these terrible tantrums, and someone being like, oh, she's so much better now. And I realized that in the book, like, she didn't really have any. I have read the original Secret Garden once, a couple years ago. I'm very much less familiar with the original book itself, but the 90s movie, I watched, I don't even know how many times. We had it on VHS, and I watched the shit out of that movie. I loved it so much. And that movie, from memory, and from what I remember of my one time reading The Secret Garden, the original, it is very close to the original book, the characters and the plot. There's a little more blatant random racism in the book than I remember there being in the movie. But yeah, and it's just there, and that's that. But yeah, as far as like the character types and how the characters behave, like in the movie that I'm very familiar with, that I'm pretty sure is very similar to the original book, like Mary is a fucking nightmare. She is a nightmare when she first comes to this place. She is literally like like screaming at the top of her lungs, screeching, laying down, kicking, like having fits. Like she's a terror. And her in the movie and in the original, it's her cousin Colin that she comes across. And he is also just a terror and like has fits and just like a little nightmare. And they're also younger. They're like probably like 10 or 11, I want to say they are. They're not teenagers at all. Maybe they're like 12, but they're younger. And yeah, so in the book though, in this book, when that character said that, I'm like, there was one scene where she kind of like stomped her foot and like kind of went and cried, and like that was her like having, that was what they were referring to, like, oh, that one time she had a tantrum. I'm like, that wasn't really a tantrum. Like they were just watered down. And in this, the cousin is Olive. It's a girl. And same thing, like just like a nice kid. Like they were all just like nice kids generally, like just good little nice kids. And so then it made the like mentions toward the end of like their growth feel just really like random and unearned. I was like, what growth? There wasn't anything to grow from. Like they were just very watered down characters. And also for the plot, the garden itself, like the secret garden, it was in here for sure, but I don't know, I just didn't feel like there was the magic of it. It didn't feel like this like magical fairy tale place like it did in the original book and certainly in the movie. Like the just descriptions of it weren't as good, I guess, for me. Like it was there, but it was very much on the back burner. And I just kind of wish that it had been like more of a thing. And the pacing was also a little bit off towards the end. Like some of the scenes, the kind of like conclusion type scenes toward the end just felt really, really rushed. There's one in particular where two characters are kind of reuniting, and it felt so rushed and fast and just like, everything's fine now after one conversation. And I was like, okay. I definitely do like the addition here of, you know, like a sapphic romance being involved in it. And also the Métis characters, like in the original, there are some characters who are Indian or mixed race and Indian in England, and they're there, or they're talked about a little bit, or they're mentioned, but like in the movie, I don't even remember if I don't know that there were any in the movie. I don't think there were. I think they took that out entirely. In the original book, like I said, I remember there being some just like blatant racism on the page. And in here there was a little bit too, and definitely like just stereotyping of these characters. But like some of the servants in the house that Mary was talking to regularly were Métis. Most of them were, actually, I think, if not all of them. So we were getting much more of their perspective and much more of like a conversation happening about like their perspective on things and just colonization and their experience living in this place and how people treat them. Like there was a lot more of that going on, and I did enjoy that added element to it. So yeah, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was fine, but like I said, I'm gonna unhaul it. I'm not gonna read it ever again. It just didn't quite do it for me like I would have liked. And another e-arc from NetGalley that I got was Lost Ark Dreaming by Suyi Davies Okungbowa, and another novella. And I should have trusted my gut here. This one is sci-fi, and technically cli-fi, like climate fiction, climate change fiction, and a novella. And like both of these things, I hesitated. When I saw this one, I was like, it's Suyi Davies Okungbowa. I have generally liked what I've read of his. The sequel to Son of the Storm, I really didn't enjoy, but I was curious, right? And it sounded intriguing. Like it sounded cool, but I'm like, Shoshana, it's like sci-fi. Probably not, but like it is a novella, and that might make the sci-fi elements like better, but also it's a novella and you don't really tend to love novellas. But I requested it and I just should have trusted my gut. I didn't hate this by any means. I think a lot of people will really love this. If you are someone who does enjoy sci-fi from time to time, and cli-fi certainly, and like you can get down with novellas, check it out. It's kind of like in a future world where like flooding has happened and there's these residential towers that were built just off the coast of Lagos, and now people live in them because they have to. And it's like kind of a hierarchy of like the uppers being like the most important, and then like the midders, the people who live in the middle, and then the lowers, the people who live below sea level. And like it's a very kind of strict society. You cannot move between levels unless you have like a, clearance, like per your job, like you kind of work for the government. And yeah, it's like very, very strict kind of dystopian thing, trying to keep everyone alive and cool, calm, and collected, living in these like claustrophobic towers in this new world where everything is flooded. So yeah, I think a lot of people will love this probably, or at the very least enjoy it way more than I did. It was just a little bit too technical for me still, and a little bit too abridged feeling, as I tend to feel with most novellas. And I also felt like the writing style was pretty different from like what I've come to know of Okungbowa's writing style. I don't know if it's just because this is more like sci-fi, where what I've read has been fantasy, perhaps. I'm not sure. He just was kind of trying something different. It just felt a lot more like cryptic and hand-wavy. Again, with the like kind of magical realism or fabulism feel. This isn't like a magical realism, fabulism thing. It's just fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. But just the writing style feeling very like, ooh, I'm not gonna like explain things. And like, I know some people really love that and get down with it. It just doesn't usually work for me. Also, the ending is incredibly open-ended and leaves so many things unanswered. It almost feels like a cliffhanger. And I don't know if it is going to be a series of novellas. I don't think so, though. It's not like listed like that here on Storygraph or anything. So yeah, I don't know. I didn't have a terrible time with this, and I did read through it pretty quickly. And I do genuinely see there being a really large audience of people who will really, really enjoy it or love it. But it just wasn't for me. It ended up being kind of like, yeah, it was fine. So I gave this one 3 stars. Bummer times. But again, take that with a grain of salt. If you're someone that likes sci-fi typically, and you can get down with novellas a lot, I would say check this out. And then I picked up, I've had this on my shelves for at least a year, maybe a couple years, A Hero Born by Yong, Legends of the Condor House 1. This is translated work, and I DNF'd. I DNF'd. How far did I get into it? Not too far. 7%. And this is like wuxia, where it's like kung fu fantasy, basically. And yeah, it could be due to the translation. Even like the best, I have no frame of reference to say whether or not I think this is a good translation or not. I have no fucking idea. I cannot read Chinese. I have no idea. So I don't even know if I'm not necessarily saying I think that like the translation is bad necessarily, but maybe it's just like a fact of translating from Chinese to English. Maybe it just like it is really hard, I think, from my understanding, like it is very difficult. And so I don't know if it could be just the translation, but the writing style was not to my taste really at all. And I had never picked up any wuxia fiction before, and I think that also might just not really be to my taste. I love like a good like martial arts movie where like, and I don't even know, I'm not that familiar with the genre of wuxia in fiction or movies or anything. So I might be like misnaming these, like I might be putting movies in my head that like would be similar to this, and you guys would be like, that's not Jashana, that's not what it is. But to me, the way the like kung fu was being done, it was very like kind of over the top and like, leaping over trees and like kind of like nonsensical a little bit. And that was like how they do kung fu. It was like almost just like fake, right? Very unrealistic types of action happening. And so it makes me think of like Kill Bill or like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like that kind of kung fu martial arts stuff that sometimes is like kind of ridiculous and clearly fake and like not realistic. I can really get down with movies like that. But for some reason in book form, it just felt kind of silly. Like I don't know what it is. I just was like, okay. So yeah, it just wasn't working. I only got 7% into it. So, I'm sure someone would be like, you should give it longer to see. But I know myself, I just was not getting at all invested in the story or the characters. And honestly, it felt like a little bit discombobulated. That's like the writing style element. It just felt like discombobulated, and I was like, what is going on? Who are these people? What is happening? Like, I don't, like, just felt a little bit all over the place, I guess. And I just figured it probably just isn't for me. So there we have it. Those are most of the books I read in April, not all of them. There's like 1 or 2 before this and might be another one after, like I said. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.